welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Welcome to our conversation inspired by the interview with Caleb Arring and Matthew VanHorn from last week's episode. They shared with us their journey developing their business, which helps LGBTQ entrepreneurs through building community and coaching and other services. And we really enjoyed the conversation, and so we're wanting to share some of our biggest takeaways with each other. We don't prescript this or anything. We just talk and share our biggest takeaways.
That's right. I'm all about the freestyle life.
You are a freestyler.
It's true. On the microphone.
I'm not gonna freestyle though.
You should. I'll give you a beat. Here we go.
I love pizza. It's my favorite thing to eat. That's it. That's as good as this is gonna get.
Hey.
That was the only time I've ever.
Great rappers are willing to break the mold and not stick to conventional rhyme patterns. It's your favorite thing to eat.
Maybe I was going to do A-B. I just didn't get to the second B. I just had to stop.
I understand. In case you haven't noticed, this is a new format for season 2 of the podcast where we freestyle every week. I'm just kidding. This is actually, we are trying something new where we have the interviews on one week with an episode and then some reflections inspired by the conversation on the following week.
Yeah.
So, Ivy, what are we talking about today?
Well, last week, Matt shared something about the if-then trap. Do you remember this? It was like it was about conditional happiness and about how millennials can get caught in, if I have a job or if I have this promotion or if I have this car, then I'm going to be happy, etc. So he was talking about ways to look at areas of your life that are already fulfilling and to have gratitude, and that's really going to shift life for you. And it really reminded me again of the power of the story that we're telling ourselves about what's happening around us and about what we're capable of. The lens through which we see things completely shapes our reality. It's just so crazy how true this is. So let me give you an example. I started riding a bike again in the last just like couple of years. As you know, our listeners don't know, but I spent, like 10, 15 years or something like not riding a bike ever. But when I was a kid, I rode my bike and I felt like I was flying and it was really great and I was really excited. But as an adult, it sort of turned into this chore, like this exercise chore. And while there were elements of like being excited, like mostly I was just focusing really hard on my legs and how they hurt. And like, like it wasn't fun. Like I remembered it being when I was a kid. And it got even worse after I had a spill or an accident on my bike, which actually I totally caused myself. But man, I like hit the pavement and it really freaking hurt, like way more than even in some of the car wrecks that I've been in. So then it added this whole new level of fear and it just was not a pleasant experience. But I don't have a car, so I still need to bike, when it makes sense. The other day, I was riding my bike to the doctor and I was thinking about this whole concept of shifting your focus, shifting your lens, because I was focused on my legs again. All my attention was on my bottom half, like, oh, it's in so much pain. And then I had this sensation where I was like, oh my gosh, but like there's this wind in my face and my hair is flying and I brought the attention up to like the upper half of my body where I was actually experiencing like the sensation of like flying. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what it felt like when I was a kid. And like in that moment, I didn't even feel pain at all in my legs. I was not even paying any attention to that. And it occurred to me that, even when I was a little kid, it probably was hard at times, but I just didn't care because I was focusing on why it was fun. And like, then I just like allowed myself to enjoy that bike ride. And the few times that I've ridden after that, it's shifted, like just literally shifting my focus from my bottom half, which symbolized like pain and struggle. And like, I have to be doing this to like my upper half of my body's like, oh, I'm flying. This is really fun. Like, what if biking is fun? And then, the pain just sort of goes away and is ignored. And it literally shifted my it shifted my reality. It shifted the way I was totally experiencing life right then. And it's such
Mhm.
a small example, but that applies to so many other things.
Yeah, I think there's always that parallel in any part of life. I've also heard it described as life is like a train tracks, and there's like good and bad rails,
Hmm.
and it takes both of them to keep the train moving, and whichever rail you focus on becomes your reality. And if it sounds like I'm creating this like poetry, it's because I may or may not have done a rap about this on my new album, Remix Your Reality.
Oh my god.
The track is holding on. Anyway,
Woo!
the
It's
track.
a really good album.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So I truly believe that there is that in any given situation. And we often feel powerless, like this can only mean suffering. And I think the more we do what you're describing, which is consciously say, wait a second, how could this be enjoyable? How can this be different from how it is right now? Then we are not victims to the situation, but we're empowered. It's ironic. I actually had a similar situation riding my bike because we live in the San Francisco Bay Area, in case you didn't know. So we ride a bike around a lot as our primary mode of transportation. But I was riding up a bunch of hills recently, and my typical attitude was just like, okay, just get up this hill. Like, but recently, what I told myself was, I said, what if you power up this hill and not stand? Because if you stand, you'll burn yourself out. But like, rather than just seeing like how slow you can go just to make it, what if you move with intention? And to your point, not only was it more enjoyable of an experience, I actually got up the hill faster. So it solved both of my problems at the same time. And I felt empowered because I wasn't like, oh, I'm a victim. It's like, how steadily can I keep pushing more and more up this hill? And I think it's so true for anything in life when we're traveling, when we're in a frustrating work situation. It can be so easy to be like, oh, this is terrible. There's nothing I can do. And sometimes that might be true, but the thing we can always do is change the focus. So I think that's a great message of empowerment.
Well, and it goes back to the gratitude piece, right? Which is, you're saying that like to consciously like shift, like how is this supporting me or how can this be fun? Like I think that's where gratitude can be really helpful. But there's that moment of recognizing that in some ways, like this is a habit
Hmm.
of thought and a habit of approach and a habit of living your life. Like it can be shifted. We feel like it's not a choice, but in a way, I mean, in some ways we're not making a choice, right? Because we're living by default. But when you live in choice and recognize you have choice, you can have that shift. And just practice it on a daily basis, just over little things, and you'll be surprised at how it all starts to add up and affect you. I for sure.
Yeah, and I noticed that if then conditional happiness thing, how can we set ourselves up more for using the gratitude to appreciate what is and say now that instead of if then, right? So
Hmm.
now that I am waiting for the plane, how can I help myself be happy? Now that I'm stuck in traffic, how can I be happy? So there's sort of this acceptance
Yeah,
instead
you're
of
focusing on the present.
exactly,
Yeah.
and gratitude for the present rather than if things were different, because that's what the implication is with if, right?
Mhm.
If only
Mhm.
something were different, then, but it's like now that we are here. Yeah.
I like that. That's great.
Thank you.
So what was your big takeaway?
Well, it is related to that. It's this idea of now that in something that Caleb and Matthew said about how they started their business, which is they looked at the challenges that they had overcome as entrepreneurs, and specifically as entrepreneurs within the LGBTQ community. And they said, we did that. Now, how can we use that to help other people? And for people who are struggling to find their purpose or know what to do in life, I think so often it feels like it is something beyond us that we don't own yet, that we don't control yet, that we haven't studied for or prepared for yet. Like your purpose is somewhere out there. But I would challenge and argue, what have you already done well that you can help other people do? What problems have you solved? What challenges have you overcome that you can help someone else do. Because I think sometimes it feels like I have to learn a skill that I haven't learned before in my 30 or 33 or 35 or 20 years of being alive. And that may be true. Maybe there is some skill that you want to learn that requires a lot of study. But in the meantime, what is something you already do well or a problem you've already solved to help people?
That's a really interesting perspective. And it's interesting too because when I think of purpose, I'm thinking of like for me, look, here's my purpose on the wall right here. It's so big. It says through presence, vulnerability, and self-reflection, I seek to help others become fully expressed manifestations of the divine and to be wholly connected with their experience of life. So when I think of purpose, I'm thinking of like the ways in which I want to like affect people or the impact or change that I want to have. And what I am hearing you say is that it sounds like you're talking about like the vehicle through which your purpose is fulfilled.
Yeah.
Because essentially like I could have that big purpose or my big purpose is to help people feel more whole or to help, like whatever it is for people. You could feel like you had to wait until you got certain set of skills, but it's like you can look at how can I help people be more wholly connected with their experiences of life through what I already know so that I can start fulfilling that purpose now rather than thinking of purpose being about like your skill or your vocation or that sort of thing because does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I was just going to say that I think for some people, that idea of the big purpose, like the life purpose, feels so daunting and so majestic and terrifying because it's massive that I think sometimes looking at the roadmap of problems you've solved, ways you've helped people in the past, and ways you can help people in the future can give you some guideposts to help you find a direction that does feel fulfilling and that helps you realize that big picture purpose. And to give an example, my purpose, sort of like your established one, was to bring hope and music into people's lives. And that was based on the fact that I'd been using music, primarily hip hop, but also some a cappella and stuff, to bring hope into people's lives and to make them feel better and to help them solve some of their problems or learn better in the case of helping middle school students with their US history studies. And it's interesting because I think starting on that path and keeping going helped me eventually come to the work we're doing now about transforming people's lives and helping them live their most fulfilled and passionate and expressive existence. But when I was starting to come up with my purpose 10 years ago, I wasn't where I am here. And so what I'm really saying is that I think we all have a purpose relative to the time frame and the place we are at that point in life. Like our purpose can change.
Yeah, it does. It does definitely change. I mean, through the coach training that I did, we do some activities that sort of help you flesh out purpose. And one of them is this really great visualization about, and so let me just give credit to the Coaches Training Institute because this is in their training material. But one of the visualizations they do is imagining that there is a billboard on a highway and that thousands of people a day are going to be impacted by the phrase that you put on that billboard. And then it's like, what is that phrase? Like if there was one message that you could get people to hear. And for me, when I did it in my training, it was that, anything is possible. And I started fleshing out that, my purpose was around helping people shift what they think is possible for themselves. And that's a little different than the one I just read, right? Like there's layers to it, in different languages around it. But at the time, it was really focused on helping people shift what they think is possible for themselves and for the world and that sort of thing, So, I mean, yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I love that you're just like encouraging. It's like, okay, just what is fulfilling you? What is one way that you can create impact on others in some way, in a positive way? And pay attention to that. And like that will lead to a better understanding of what you're really wanting to create in life and what you're really excited about creating.
Yeah, and accepting where you are now. I think that is fine if you don't have everything figured out. And by taking one step forward that you figure out, and you just have to make your best intuitive, purposeful step in that direction, knowing that it might not be the path that you end up on in the long run, or it might be a path that may feel like a dead end at the time or something. But there's no way to know it unless you start walking on the path. Because what may appear to be a dead end when you first look at it may just be the darkness when you turn a corner, and all of a sudden there's a giant fountain of light and dolphins jumping in this apparently very large fountain if it has dolphins in it.
That's the visual
I'm
you're
trying to
creating
give
the scene.
sensorial experience for our listeners.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I think
Sorry.
That's creepy. No, it's
my dolphin
past
call?
its time.
Well, not all bits are made to last.
Oh my gosh. On a serious note, all right. Change. I was going to talk about change and how I would wish that you would change. Stop doing that bit.
I'm sorry I've derailed you with my beautiful fountain. You just overcome.
But seriously, you're saying that eventually, you might go on that path and it might not end up where you think it's going to. And I think that you can just guarantee that it's not going to end up where you think it's going to.
Sure.
Let's just be real. I mean, millennials are at their oldest right now, 37. So, you've got plenty of life left for stuff to change on you. Your body's going to change. Your friends are going to change. Your kids are going to change. It's going to change. So change is going to happen, but it's just are you going to have this resistance to it? Are you going to stay in the same miserable job that you hate because it's just safe? Or are you going to stay small? Or you're going to stay on the couch, just forever and ever and ever and ever? For real, these are questions I'm asking myself right now, about the couch.
No,
okay?
it's good. I know.
It's real.
It's yo, bro, you can stay on the couch. It's cool.
I'm saying, because for years, right?
Yeah.
Because we're avoiding change, when in reality, change is going to happen to us anyway. So we may as well get the ball rolling in all of these areas, creating change that's more in the direction toward what we're wanting, to what we're really excited about creating.
I love it. And I think that's a great reminder for all of us when we are feeling those frustrations, whether they're the daily inconveniences or the big life questions, to remember that we do have that capability, even if we can't change the circumstance, which I would argue we can do a lot more often than we think.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a choice of some type to make. But if we truly are, sitting on the airplane, buckled into our seat with nothing in front of us, then that's when we can change what we focus on.
I think that's the perfect time to be changing what you focus on, because being on a plane with nothing to look at sucks.
That's true. But hey, maybe we are in your headphones on a plane right now.
Oh, you're right. And also, it doesn't have to suck, because you can be meditating. You can be thinking about the miracle of flight.
I think about the miracle of flight all the time.
Me too. I'm like, wow, look at these clouds. I'm like, we're above the clouds right now,
going
people.
500 miles an hour in a toaster.
See, that's way more exciting than coming from the, oh gosh, I'm strapped in perspective.
Yeah, exactly. You're here with all these people who are all on different journeys to do all kinds of different things, and maybe some screaming children, which, again, the miracle of life. That's why I try to tell myself to keep from getting Hulk angry at them.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
You don't want to do that.
I know.
You would crash the plane.
That's true. Well, yes, I'm not going to Hulk. I am going to CrossFit more often, but I'm not going to Hulk. Yeah, is that the best? Just you have to plug CrossFit anytime, because CrossFit. When you CrossFit, you have to CrossFit about CrossFit. No, I haven't been to CrossFit in 3 months, so this is a painful reentry. But anyway, that's completely unrelated to anything else we've been talking about. Please say something else relevant, Ivy.
So I was going to ask you, how did you shift your reality while you were in CrossFit last night?
Oh, well, we did 110 90 reps of various things. And at one point, I almost totally wiped out on a box jump. So they set up wooden boxes that are 2 feet tall and you have to jump up on them. And I almost bit it. My foot like caught the lip, and thankfully I managed to catch myself before I had actually not made it all the way on one jump and had tore up my leg. And so I was just standing there holding onto the box, almost having massively injured myself. And I thought to myself, I'm so grateful to be uninjured right now. So,
oh, glorious.
So rather than thinking, everything's very painful, I've been doing all these burpees and pull-ups and everything for the past 20 minutes, I thought, thank God I'm still intact.
That's great.
Yes.
Well, that sounds like a good place to wrap up.
We hope you're still intact at the end of this podcast.
You're intact. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We hope that you do check out last week's episode if you haven't, so you could hear more about Caleb and Matthew's journey. And we hope that you listen to next week's episode when we have a brand new guest for you.
All right. Keep it real, Motivational Millennial Podcast listeners.
Woo!
We're so weird. Thanks for loving us through our weirdness.
For show notes and previous episodes, or to learn more about our coaching and event offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. That's millennial, MILLENNIAL. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
Our theme music was composed and performed by our very own Blake Brandis.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Brittany Felix. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!